Hey everybody, Professor Snart checking in, looking and feeling a little worse for wear, like I think a lot of people are these days. But anyway, here I am. I don't know if you can mute or video, but you may just want to listen to this one. Although even though I don't sound very good either, but anyway, it is what it is. Okay, so we're moving into Unit 7 then, which is our first essay for the course. And you may have noticed that we're actually about midway through the term, getting pretty close to that. And so we're just coming to our first essay assignment, which is important to note just for a couple of reasons. Practically speaking, it means that this is really the first major points assignment that we've got. And in fact, the later essays are worth more. The final essay is worth the most. So we're still kind of building incrementally, although this is the first major writing assignment that we've got. So 100 points out of 1,000 for the course. So, you know, pretty substantial, especially relative to what we've done before. You may also wonder why it's taken us this long to get to a major essay. And that's pretty intentional as far as the course design here, because, again, you really want to be thinking of these essays as your opportunity to reflect back to me that you have done the work for the class, paid attention, read directions carefully, learned the material, and can now apply those concepts and ideas in an actual writing situation. So if the essay has that purpose, in my mind at least, it doesn't make much sense to write an essay in week 2 of the class, because what would you reflect back to me that you've learned by that point, like how to log in and do an introduction? So we've really built up to this point, and it's taken us this long to really get in place and be able to practice a couple of times in a smaller scale. Some of the basic concepts, whether it's research-related stuff, organizing, general versus specific statements within an essay, within paragraphs, integrating quotations, all of that kind of stuff. So we've finally reached a point where it makes sense, I think, to do a more formal or a major assignment here where you can finally bring all that stuff together rather than doing individual kinds of exercises as we've done throughout the units to this point. Okay, before I look at the unit material itself then, what I'm going to do is actually draw your attention to something in terms of this and the next major unit, Unit 8. Unit 7 is actually broken into 2 different pieces, but Units 7 and 8 are 2 different essay assignments, but actually you're working with the same material in essay number 2, or Unit 8, that you produce in essay 1. So Unit 8 is really a revision, but also the integration of secondary sources based on essay number 1. As I note in the assignment here, but I'm going to reiterate it because it can cause some real frustration later on, is that you're obviously writing about one of the short stories that we've looked at so far, but I would caution against writing on Sherman Alexie's flight patterns, not because it's not a good story or it has might have interesting things to say about it, but for whatever reason there's a real lack of easily accessible secondary source material through the databases for that essay. So while that's not required for essay number 1, for the Unit 7 that we're working on, secondary source material will be required for Unit 8. And if you write on flight patterns and then you try to go and do the secondary source part for Unit 8, you really kind of run into a wall. You have to use stuff that's not really applicable and it doesn't really work quite as well. So you just run into problems. So I'm really going to caution against using Alexie's flight patterns, just for the simple reason that, practically speaking, it's really hard to find secondary material on that short story. It's actually surprising that that's the case, to be honest with you, because generally the databases that we use are really designed for student use, like the kind that we're doing here, but the way they choose works for inclusion is largely based on what can be found, generally in anthologies like our textbook. So again, they often will choose or look through a table of contents and make sure that the database provides information on the titles that can be found there. So it's a little surprising that Alexie's flight patterns doesn't show up, but it doesn't, so we sort of have to deal with that. Okay, for Unit 7 itself then, and actually Unit 7 and 7b, because they're two parts of the Essay 1 assignment, we have a drafting and editing phase and a virtual conference opportunity for the first part of the unit, so Unit 7 itself. And then, of course, 7b, if you click into it, there's a peer exchange that will be set up so you can exchange your essay with somebody in the class, or actually probably a couple people depending on the group size. And then, of course, you're ultimately submitting the essay for 7b. So it's important to take a look at the due dates then and look through Unit 7 and 7b together and understand what components are due within each of those time frames. So we are concerned with obviously Unit 7 right away here, that's due Thursday, March 1st, or actually I should clarify that. The due date for this first part of the unit is kind of arbitrary because really it's giving you information about the essay assignment and then getting you started on the writing process, so it's kind of an artificial break point between this unit and the next one, because really you're just working on the essay. But the due date or the breaking point before we move into the next unit is really going to be Friday for us, because if you look into towards the bottom of the Unit 7 itself, what I've set up is a virtual conference time for Friday morning, just because I have a big block of time then. So we have the opportunity to meet virtually in real time through one of a couple of different conferencing tools that I have made available here. There's also a virtual conference sign up, so you can choose a specific time so you know that when you're going to meet with me. And we can either use Skype or this other software called Adobe Connect, which basically just lets us talk virtually, whether it's video like this, we can just instant message, we could just do audio. But the bigger thing that it allows is for me to actually look at the writing that you're doing, so we don't just have to talk kind of theoretically or generally about it, but we can actually look at specific writing that you've done if you have particular questions. Again, that could be really specific about citation work cited. It could be more general, like, is this okay as an introduction? So it's really a good opportunity to connect really directly and immediately with me. So again, that's really the only due date that's happening for the Unit 7 part. Otherwise, you're really just beginning work on the essay and continuing to work towards that fuller draft that you want to have ready for as we get into Unit 7b. And that due date then becomes much more final. We're back to our Thursday due date when you're actually submitting the final essay. So be sure you take a look then. Again, coordinate due dates, look through Unit 7 and 7b so you know what's going on, and be sure to take advantage of that virtual conference time, either within the time frame I've set up, but if that doesn't work for you, then by all means be in touch with me and we can maybe set something else up. Okay, so I'm going to leave that for now and just go to the essay assignment. And obviously it's all here, so I'm just reiterating what's already in the course or that we've looked at or talked about already. But be really careful then that you're doing basic stuff like the integrating quotations from the primary text, putting your works cited together. That is really fundamentally important. So any major problems there is going to have a really significant impact for the negative on your grade. So it's important to understand that. Obviously, you know, everything we've talked about as far as tone and approach and style applies here. So you're not writing in the first person, you're writing directly about the short story, so an analysis, you know, interpretation, not just your subjective opinion. There's prompts that are given here as far as, you know, ways you might approach the short story. So again, just pay attention to really just reading directions. It comes down to that, you know, pretty fundamentally. So for Unit 7, you know, get into the assignment, begin to do some brainstorming, be in touch with me via email if you have any initial questions. But really try to plan for that virtual conference so we do have the time to meet. Even if you get to that stage and realize that you're really not as far along as you'd hope to be, As far as the writing, it's just a good opportunity to check in, tell me where you're at, see if you have any problems or questions or concerns that are coming up. If for no other reason than just to really give yourself confidence as you do move forward into the 7B part of the essay assignment, when you really do want to have, things falling into place for you. Okay, so I'm going to leave it at that. Read the directions really carefully, have a look through the due dates and Unit 7 and 7B to coordinate things, and begin looking at signing up for a conference time so that you can take advantage of that opportunity to really produce an essay that ultimately reflects your best work, and of course reflects to me that you have paid attention to the course throughout and are now able to reflect those concepts that we've talked about and basic practical things like the research aspect, works cited, in-text citation, integrating sources smoothly, all of that kind of stuff. All right, so be sure to be in touch if you have any questions or concerns, and hopefully I will see you during a virtual conference time. And again, I apologize for my disheveled appearance and the sound of my voice, which is getting progressively worse, so I'll just cut it off there and leave it at that.